You set 3 priorities at the offsite. The whole leadership team finally aligned. 6 weeks later, you drop in on a team 2 layers down, and they're heads down on work that isn't even on the list. The strategy didn't fail. It just never got translated. What left the top was a clear priority reached the floor as a slogan nobody could act on. In this episode, we're going to walk through the decision handoff. It'll help you build a strategy that survives every layer, carried by managers who make decisions instead of passing notes. Hi, I'm Summer, founder of Driven Connection, and we eliminate inefficiencies that stunt growth. So what is this problem really? Most leaders read it as a communication problem. The strategy didn't land the first time, so they send it again, louder, with another all hands and another email. But volume was never the issue. What you actually have is a translation problem. Transmitting a message means passing the words along intact. Translating one means turning that strategy into a decision that the next layer can make on a Tuesday morning. Those are 2 different jobs, and your middle managers were built for the first one, and almost none were ever taught the second. And the signal downgrades fast. Donald Sull, who studies strategy execution at Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Sloan School of Management, surveyed the managers responsible for carrying the strategy out. Only 28% could name 3 of their company's priorities. Agreement falls off a cliff at the first handoff below the top team. The people most certain the strategy is clear are usually sitting one level above where it actually breaks. Let me show you what a good version looks like because I lived it early in my career. For 5 years, I was a senior corporate trainer at Red Robin, and part of my job was opening new restaurants, 9 of them across multiple states. Here's what corporate did really well. They handed us a playbook, the standard every restaurant runs on, the recipes, the operations, and the way a shift is supposed to go. Those things never changed. A guest gets the same experience in every single state. But they also handed us something most companies don't do, the authority to adapt the training. How we got a brand new crew ready for opening day, the training activities themselves, those were ours to modify so we could meet each crew where they actually were and still get them to the same standard the guests deserved. And here's why that worked instead of turning into chaos. We weren't guessing. We were aligned on what a great opening was supposed to deliver and how this one fit the bigger picture. And we were bought into it. Headquarters and the floor were working on the same goal from different levels. They set the intent and the boundary, and we made the calls inside of them. We onboarded more than 1,000 new team members across those openings that way. Alignment plus real authority is what made the strategy and the execution land in the room. So if the strategy is clear at the top and still dies on the way down, what's actually causing it? There are 3 reasons, and the first one is the one nobody likes to say out loud. First, we stopped developing the people we put in the middle. Taking a strategy and turning it into a decision your team can act on is a real skill. It's teachable, and almost nobody teaches it anymore. We promote a strong individual contributor, hand them a title, and assume translation came in the box. The cost lands on payroll. You're paying a full management salary for a layer that can only relay because relaying is the only job it was equipped to do. Second, we give managers responsibility without the authority to match it. We hold them accountable for the outcome, but every real decision still climbs back up to us. So they can't translate. They can only relay and wait. The cost is forfeited revenue. The deal you lost while the decision that should have taken an hour sat in a queue for a week. Third, we measure whether we send the message, not whether it landed. We count all the hands, the deck, the email, and we call it communicated. Sull found managers were far more likely to blame too many competing priorities than a lack of clarity. Leadership wasn't silent. Nobody checked what the next layer actually heard. The cost is the leader's time, the most expensive hours in the building, spending re-explaining a strategy that was already announced. Notice the through line. Not one of these is a manager failing to do the job. Each one is something the business did to the manager, and what the business did and what the business can undo. Here's the move that changes the most, and it isn't a better communication plan. It's changing what you hand down. Stop handing your managers the message. Start handing them the ability to make a decision. W. Edwards Deming, the engineer whose ideas rebuilt post-war manufacturing, estimated that 94% of the trouble in any organization belongs to the system, not the person inside it. 94%. So when your strategy dies in the middle, the manager isn't the defect, the handoff is. You can replace every manager in the building and keep the same broken handoff, and you'll get the same result. So fix the handoff. A real one that has 3 parts: the intent, what you're trying to achieve, the why, the reason it matters so the manager can adapt when reality doesn't match the plan, and the boundary, the edge that can't cross without checking. Give them those 3 things plus the authority to act, and you're handing over a decision they can own. Hand down what they want with no why and no authority, and all you're passing along is a message to carry. The difference between a strategy that moves and one that just sits in a desk is whether the person 2 layers down got the decision or got a memo. A memo waits for permission, a decision moves the work. Let me show you 2 companies that prove that this is fixable at very different sizes. The first is Mobil. In the early 90s, the leadership team built their strategy on a balanced scorecard, the measurement approach created by Robert Kaplan and David Norton at Harvard. But here's the part that matters. They didn't just publish the strategy. They surveyed their own workforce and asked a blunt question. Do you actually understand it? The first time they asked, only 20% said yes. The turning point wasn't a better slide. It was treating that 20% as the real problem and deliberately translating the strategy down through every layer year after year. 5 years later, that number was 80%. Same company, same strategy. They stopped assuming it had landed and started making sure it did. The second is Google. A few years in, their people analytics team ran a survey to prove that managers don't really matter and that great engineers basically manage themselves. They were trying to show the middle layer was overhead. The data actually showed the opposite. Manager quality was one of the strongest drivers of team performance they could find. So they did the thing most companies skip. They named the specific behaviors their best managers used, and they taught them. The turning point was a company full of skeptical engineers deciding that managing was a skill you could build. 3/4 of their worst performing managers measurably improved. One company fixed the translation. The other built the translators. Both started with the same decision: stop assuming the middle and invest in it. Here's how to do that in your business starting this week. The Decision Handoff takes about 30 minutes run on one decision you're already carrying. It moves a real call out of your hands and into a manager's with enough context that they can act on their own instead of waiting on you. Do it once and you'll feel the difference: a manager who decides and a strategy that reaches the front line as something a person can act on. Here are those 4 steps. Step 1, frame the decision in 3 parts: the intent, the why, and the boundary. For a sales manager, that sounds like win back 4 lapsed accounts, keeping a customer's cost less than chasing a new one. You can offer up 15% without checking with me first. Intent, why, boundary. That's a decision they can own, not a slogan to carry. Step 2, hand over the decision and the authority together. This is the part that matters. And in 2026, it's also how you keep good people. Real advancement isn't only a raise, it's giving someone authority over a piece of the strategy, a decision that's genuinely theirs, and a path to grow into a bigger one. Say it plainly: this call is yours now. I'm not the approver anymore. Step 3, have them brief it back. Before they leave the room, they restate the decision in their own words. For example, so I'll prioritize the lapsed accounts and use the discount room to close them. If what comes back doesn't match what you sent, you just found your translation gap in 30 seconds for free. 5 minutes in conversation or an async written version is your team is remote. Step 4, fix the layer where it doesn't land. If the handoff broke, that isn't a bad manager. That's a layer that was never properly equipped. Walk the decision through with them, then hand them the next one. That's not babysitting. That's the development you skipped when you promoted them. To recap, step 1, frame the intent, the why, and the boundary. Step 2, hand over the decision and the authority together. Step 3, have them brief the call back to you. Step 4, re-equip the layer where it didn't land. That's the decision handoff. Run the decision handoff this week on one real decision, and you'll start building a strategy that survives every layer, carried by managers who make decisions instead of passing notes. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught us that some things are in our control and some aren't. You can control the clarity of the intent you send and whether you hand down a decision or a message. Spend your energy there. You're learning, you're growing, and you're building a system-led organization where strategy reaches the front line as a decision someone can own. Each episode names a different pattern. Subscribe so the next one finds you. I'm your host, Summer Ames Prodan. We'll fix another inefficiency on the next episode of Driven Growth.